You never really know your neighbors until you tell them no. It started with something simple, a no trespassing sign. But what came next? A full-blown meltdown, a destroyed flowerbed, and a night that ended in flames. Literally. This is the story of how one quiet homeowner learned that some people can't stand losing control, and how karma came back louder than fireworks. I moved into my new house about 8 months ago, a small, peaceful neighborhood where everyone seemed normal enough. 3 sides of my property shared fences with neighbors, 2 of them kind and easy to deal with. The third one? Let's just say, he turned out to be a nightmare in human form. His name was Gary. Around 60, scruffy gray hair, always in stained t-shirts, with this permanent scowl like the world owed him something. He'd been renting the house next door for nearly 10 years. From day one, he acted like my yard was his second driveway. I'd wake up to find random junk, yard debris, tree branches, even his tools, thrown over the fence onto my side. His excuse? The wind must have blown it. Right, but the real problem was his ladder. He kept it leaning off his shed roof, except that she'd sat right along our shared fence. So half the ladder hung 3 feet into my yard. It wasn't just rude. It was a liability. If that ladder fell and hit someone, or if he hurt himself stepping on my property, guess who would be responsible? Me. I tried to ignore it for months, but it never stopped. Every week that ladder showed up again like some unwanted guest who didn't get the hint. One Friday morning I came home from a brutal night shift, half asleep, exhausted, and there it was again. That stupid ladder sitting in my yard like it owned the place. Something inside me just snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't knock on his door. I just quietly walked over, lifted the ladder, and set it down on his side of the fence. Then I took out a bright red no trespassing sign and nailed it right above the spot where he always leaned that ladder. Clean. Simple. Final. Or so I thought. The next morning, around 7:30, I woke up to the sound of crunching, not normal yard work. This was violent, chaotic. I looked out the window and froze. Gary was in my yard. Again. But this time, he wasn't climbing. He was destroying. He was ripping up my flower bed with his bare hands, throwing plants and pavers over the fence. He was red-faced, sweating, muttering curses under his breath. I ran outside and shouted, "What the hell are you doing, Gary?" He spun around, eyes wild, and screamed back, "You think you can tell me what to do on my property?" "Your property?" I shot back. "You're 3 feet over the line." He just pointed his finger at me and said words I won't repeat, every one of them louder than the last. Then he stormed off, mumbling something about getting even. I grabbed my phone, took photos of the mess, and texted everything to his landlord. I wasn't looking for revenge, and I just wanted it to stop. Around 9 a.m., I sat down with coffee, waiting for a response. But instead of a message, I heard boom, boom, fireworks. In broad daylight. I looked outside. Gary was standing near the fence, setting off small fireworks and laughing like it was the 4th of July. Each crack echoed through the neighborhood. My dog started barking nonstop. That's when I realized this wasn't just petty anymore. It was harassment. I texted the landlord again with photos and videos. My boyfriend, who was out of state, told me to let the landlord handle it. My brother said forget the landlord. Call the cops. By 2 p.m. I still hadn't heard anything back from the landlord. I thought about calling the police's non-emergency line, but they said I'd need to wait until Monday to file a full report. So I waited. Finally, around 3:30 p.m., the landlord texted, "I'll talk to him after work and check in with you this evening." I breathed a little easier. Maybe that would calm things down, but by 4 p.m. things took a darker turn. I was outside playing fetch with my dog when Gary came storming out again. He started yelling across the fence, furious that I had snitched on him. "You think you can mess with me? You'll regret this," he shouted. Then, just to prove his point, he dragged his car right up to the edge of the torn-up flower bed, rolled down the windows and blasted rock music at full volume. The bass shook the ground, and as if that wasn't enough, he started lighting more fireworks, this time from his car's trunk. It was absurd, chaotic, like watching someone self-destruct in real time. FaceTimed my boyfriend to show him what was happening, not because I wanted to gossip, but because I was genuinely scared. I kept recording everything, time-stamped, and sent it all to the landlord in real time. Gary's behavior was so erratic that I didn't know if he was going to start throwing things again. Or worse, come over the fence. I didn't want to be home alone anymore. So, I leashed my dog and walked 2 doors down to my neighbor's house. He was an older man, retired, calm, and friendly. He lived with his aging parents. When I told him what happened, he shook his head and said, "That's not like Gary. Something's off. Maybe he's drinking again." He offered to check on Gary while I stayed inside with his parents. 30 minutes later, he came back, shaking his head. "He's still there," he said quietly. "Blasting music, sitting in his car. Looks calm now, but something's wrong with him." I asked, "Should I call the police?" He sighed. "If you call them now, it might make him snap. Just stay here until things cool down." So I waited. We chatted for a bit. His parents gave my dog treats. The tension slowly eased, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Gary wasn't done yet. Around 7:30 p.m., my neighbor walked me back home that night. I couldn't sleep. The street was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. I kept replaying the day in my head. The flower bed, the yelling, the music, the fireworks. Gary was unhinged, Pagal, and I knew deep down he wasn't finished. My plan was still simple: file a full police report on Monday. I had the photos, I had the videos of the music and the fireworks in broad daylight. I sat in my living room, curtains drawn, just listening. Around 10 p.m., I heard it again. Boom, my heart jumped. I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds, and there he was. Gary. He was back in his yard, this time with a huge box of fireworks. He wasn't just harassing me now. He was throwing a full-on party for himself, a one-man meltdown. He'd light one, laugh maniacally as it shot up, and then yell something at my house. "You like this, huh? You gonna snitch on this too?" I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just grabbed my phone, hit record, and zoomed in as much as I could from the safety of my dark living room. "More evidence for the police," I muttered. Gary was getting drunker and more reckless. He grabbed a big rocket, the kind that's probably not even legal, and tried to set it up near his shed. Yes, that shed. The one with the ladder that started this whole mess. He fumbled with the lighter, his hands shaking. The rocket tipped over. He cursed, propped it up again, and lit the fuse. A tiny spark hissed. But the rocket didn't go up. The wind was blowing just slightly, and that spark, it flew sideways right into the open door of his old dry wooden shed. For a second, nothing happened. Gary squinted, confused. Did it go out? And then, whoosh! It wasn't a boom. It was a roar. A pile of junk inside the shed, old tarps, maybe gas cans, who knows, caught fire instantly. Flames burst out of the shed door, climbing the walls. Gary stumbled back, his drunken laughter turning into a scream. "Oh, crap! Crap, crap!" He grabbed for the ladder, the very ladder that started it all. But the flames were already licking at it. He slipped, fell hard onto the grass, and just watched in horror as his entire shed went up in flames. I kept recording, my hands shaking. Within minutes, the whole neighborhood was lit up. Neighbors poured onto their porches. Phones came out. Sirens wailed in the distance. From my window, I watched the flames paint the sky orange. The firefighters arrived, dousing the blaze. And there was Gary sitting on the curb covered in soot, arguing with a police officer. His party was over. His shed was a smoking ruin. And the ladder? It was just a charred, twisted piece of metal. Poetic justice was unfolding right in front of me. The next morning, the smell of smoke was still thick in the air. Gary's landlord was there, and he looked furious. I finally walked outside. I had my phone, my folder of photos, and the police report I'd been writing. I walked up to the landlord and said, "Sir, I think you need to see this." I showed him everything. The flowerbed, the videos of the harassment, the texts I sent, and finally the video from last night, showing Gary, drunk, lighting the firework that burned down his own shed. The landlord's face went pale. He looked at the smoking debris, then at Gary, who was trying to hide, and then back at me. "I am so sorry," he said. "This ends today." He walked over to Gary. I didn't hear the words, but I saw the eviction notice. Gar Kali Karnika notice, get taped to his door. A week later, a moving truck showed up. Gary loaded his burnt junk, never once looking in my direction. Respecting boundaries isn't just about fences, it's about decency. And sometimes karma doesn't knock. It explodes like fireworks. If you've ever had a nightmare neighbor like Gary, hit that like button. And if you believe karma always finds a way, make sure you subscribe for more Law and Order.